We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us. A lot of conversation going on during the commercial break about how we got to this point, the idea of a smoking ban pretty much across the board. As you know, in restaurants and such, you go with your children and like, bans in Metro Nashville on smoking there. The one exception was bars 21 and above, that could have it. Now there's a movement. It's going to be on second reading. Councilman Jeff Syracuse talking about that with this morning. Tonight, second reading to ban it across the board. Jamie Kent is an advocate for this, a musician and the like. To get to this point, though, where municipalities would have the right to be able to pass something like this, there had to be a change in the state law, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And so you've been lobbying even to get here. You've spent time walking the halls of Ledge Plaza.
Yeah. So it was a really interesting journey for me, because this began as a local campaign in the start of the pandemic when we were all...
You guys just sitting around and you're like, look.
Yeah, this has been something that's been a thorn in my side for a long time as an artist with asthma, and then I lost a family member to being a lifetime smoker, and the pandemic sidelined us all. I'm like, how can I use my voice in a different way? And this came about here, and it started as like, how can we make Nashville smoke-free? It's kind of crazy that it's not when all these other cities are. And then we realized very quickly that a little thing called preemption prevented any locality across the state from doing anything in the entire field of tobacco. And it happens across...
Okay, preemption. We were talking about this before the show. Explain that. Preemption. Now, again, this is a tobacco state. It's tobacco state. And it's interesting that you said, because, North Carolina is also, and you said Raleigh already has smoke-free across the board. But you figure stuff like this, tobacco still is ingrained into the culture in many ways in the state of Tennessee. Is that what that was about, the preemption, to protect that?
Interestingly, I think on some level, yes, but it's a thing that I've learned about that's across the board. It's with voting, maternity rights, education. It's a thing that often large corporate lobby interests will toss in a bill to make it so they only have to have one fight at a state level instead of 20 across the state in different cities. And so that was sort of a realization that that's why a change hadn't maybe happened yet, but that we needed to try to change that at the state level. So the coalition formed, and we got an incredible amount of snowballing support in that way. But to be honest, the legislation was kind of a long shot. No one had seen any progress on that in 15 years. So we kind of had two paths that we went the legislative approach, trying to push for that change, and then we also just had a grassroots approach where we worked with venues that allowed smoking throughout the pandemic and said, hey, this may be a great time to reopen smoke-free. It's tough to wear a mask and allow smoking, and I think we helped, somewhere between 8 and 10 bars and venues go smoke-free. So, there's less and less, partly because of the work we've been doing. And then when we were able to change this at the state level, I was this guy in the hat wandering the halls of the Capitol for...
That's awesome, man. They saw you coming. We know what he's going to talk about. And then the governor signed it.
Yep, the governor signed it, yeah.
So, all right, when something like this, and from the political side of it, at least in Tennessee, and we have a Republican legislature, obviously it had bipartisan support for this to happen. But Jeff, is it the politics of it must be, if they had a ton of folks voicing opposition, saying this was going to hurt our business, this is going to hurt the bottom line and the money. If I know our legislature, they wouldn't have even considered passing this. They must have done so. There must not have been a lot. Was there a ton of... Did you run into opposition in the hallways?
I mean, of course.
Like who?
There's always opposition when it comes to tobacco in Tennessee, especially. But yeah, generally speaking, it was folks that were just supportive of smoking in general, or don't want to see any regulations on businesses.
They just don't want change or whatever. There any kind of regs.
But which is a strange argument to me, because we have this regulation on every other business. So it's not like it's this first time we're regulating it.
Well, so when you're talking with some of the state lawmakers, then, I mean, at first you probably had to walk them through some of this. They were saying, well, why do we need this? And is there one or two that you can recall it took some convincing of? But what do you think got their attention?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember there was one specific conversation where our first conversation, he's like, I can't support this in any way. And we ended up having 3 or 4 more, and and it was really cool to see the turn and realize that he explored it. Maybe there's other ways we can go about doing this, whether it's OSHA, whether it's just an overall statewide thing, and he realized that this was really the only path towards doing it, and realized that this really does have a big impact on the hospitality community and the music community, and their economic impact on our state and city are really big. And just the more data that came out, then ETSU put out a study that showed that you were just talking about when restaurants went smoke-free in 2007, and their revenues went up 62% since then, and the cool thing was employment went up 23%.
Interesting. I still remember the day before this stuff passed, Jeff, where you'd be sitting in a bar, or not a bar, I'm sorry, a restaurant, and there's that partition. Like, that's going to stop smoke, and I'd get a lousy table near the partition because I'm a non-smoker, and it just ruined my meal, and I wouldn't go back to a place like that. That's kind of what we're talking about in this case. It will draw more people back.
That's right. Yeah, this is pragmatic, evidence-based policy making at the end of the day. It's pro-business, it's pro-health.
Okay, so now with the governor signing it and Metro looking at second reading, would Nashville be the first city in the state to do this?
Indeed, yes. Proud to say.
So the fact is, it could happen here in Nashville, and it likely will, I'm guessing. But that would mean the folks that still want to smoke in a bar could go to Wilson County if there's one, or go to Rutherford County, right? As long as they haven't changed it, it's up to the county to do that, correct?
Sure, I suppose. I think pragmatically, again, that the numbers are probably dwindling on those establishments anyway. But
they were anyway as it was.
But certainly in places that the hospitality industry and then the musician community are very strong, Nashville, Memphis, Chattanooga, those are the places that we really need to protect the economic impact that these folks bring to the state.
Yeah, okay, that's right. So for it to pass in Nashville is the big deal. If it's going to pass here, it could pass anywhere, I would think, because there's so many restaurants. So what was some of your talks like with some of these restaurateurs, or rather the bar owners?
Sure, I had productive conversations. There was some agree to disagree, and there was some hesitancy of change.
Was it just the change? I don't know, or they're wondering slippery slope, we're going to agree to this, what's next, or what?
I think some of the same arguments from 2007 were here, where you don't need to regulate me. You're not mandating that somebody has to come into the business. But at the end of the day, it's about pro-health. And like I said, that the data clearly shows, as it was in 2007, that once you do go smoke-free, your revenues will go up.
Now, they may lose some of their patrons. What do you say to the folks who are smokers who say, well, gosh, I can't even go into a bar now and have a cigarette and a beer?
Will they really stop going to the place that they love because they have to step outside for a moment to have a cigarette and come back in? I really don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's where I guess we'll find out.
Sure.
It's like, I just wonder if it's a cultural thing, I think, I don't know so much, again, never being a smoker, but I do remember family members of mine and I'd like to have a cup of coffee and a cigarette, for whatever reason, and it's just, they just went together in their mind, and that was their thing.
My grandfather survived with one lung for 20 years. And it's because he was a smoker, sure. And, did he regret it? Of course.
Yeah.
So, this is protecting people.
And I think, again, if you look at other cities that have done this, those bars and venues are still alive, thriving, doing well.
Yeah.
Those people, they love the bar. They'll continue to go back and support the bar and just step outside. It's a fair, reasonable compromise for everybody.
And if you're taking a look at something compared, maybe not same, but okay, Austin is another town known for its music and its venues, and it's done it.
Yep.
And they've not. I don't know if you've been there since they've done it.
Oh yeah, plenty of times. Yeah.
So yeah, the comparison there when you go, it's as vibrant as ever.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And some of the amazing, great dive bars that are iconic to Austin, still doing great, still amazing, still love to go there because the bar itself is so awesome.
Exactly. I think that's the ultimate point. You love the music that's played there and the bar environment because it's great. You're not going to quit just because you can't have a cigarette now.
Exactly.
Because really why you were going there is not so much to smoke, but to hear the music.
Right.
All right. We'll take a break on that note. We've got some phone calls, and we're going to talk about some of the exceptions. You may be wondering, all right, what about cigar bars? What about vaping? How do those fit into the equation as well? We'll be right back with more right after this.